What's up everyone, this is Andrew here with Spark Finance, and today I'm bringing you the business recap of the most interesting business news that occurred in the past week. To start off with, we have to talk about Visa, who was trying to acquire this company called Plaid, which is a financial technology company. They were trying to expand their offerings. And then the Department of Justice came out and said, you know what, we're going to have to investigate this, and they filed an antitrust lawsuit against Visa. Well, when this came out, Visa said, you know what, this is just too much cost involved with this. They have to go through all the litigation and everything else. And they said they're going to drop the whole idea of this deal, this acquisition. And it's like, you've seen this a lot now. There's a lot of companies that, all these publicly traded companies, whenever they try and do a merger or an acquisition or anything, they get investigated for antitrust practices. And that's a huge cost burden that it puts on them. Next up, we have copper prices, which just hit a new 5-year high above $3.63 per pound on January 12th, 2021. So this is pretty high. We're seeing a lot of inflation in the metals. In the previous videos, you can see all the different commodities and how they have been increasing double digits. Well, this one back in 2011 had its last record at $4.54 a pound. So we're going to see if it's going to keep trending up towards that. Next up, we have the Nielsen data came out, and this is about streaming services, not so much TV. And they found out in the month of December, 6% of the consumer video streaming marketplace was taken up by Disney+, also known as the Mandalorian network, since that's the one show that everybody seems to love on there. Now, Netflix also was on the Nielsen data, and they had 28% of the streaming time in December. But if you're looking at December 2019, they had 31%. So Netflix, with so many competitors coming onto the market, so many that I can't even list them here, they're losing some of the market share right now. And we're going to see, because Netflix actually reports next week on if this is affecting their earnings per share. American Tower announced that they were making a big purchase. This is a company that goes into, they kind of run and rent out cell phone towers to the big cell phone companies, right? So they went and they bought for $9.4 billion in cash. They bought Spain's Telefonica business in Europe and Latin America. So that's a major purchase there and gives them a lot more potential. Now, this company used to be a big, like a high yielder. And what ended up happening was the stock has appreciated so much in the past 5 years that it is now kind of a low yield. The yield is only 2.25%, but they're getting a huge acquisition here. Then we have NIO, which is known as NIO ticker symbol. They're known as kind of like the Chinese Tesla, basically. And there's a lot of reasons for those comparisons, one of which the CEO, William Li of NIO, he's kind of similar with the kind of business aspect and the passion that Elon Musk has for Tesla. So they revealed their 4th production vehicle, the ET7 sedan. So this was a big deal for them. The price range is going to be between $70,000 and $80,000 US. Now remember, NIO or NIO, that's actually traded on the US exchanges, but it is a Chinese company, right? Now they're going to have this new car coming out. It's supposed to be available in 2022. They also announced a new battery technology to go from 100 kilowatt batteries to 150 kilowatt batteries. So they're saying that this could give them a range of a potentially 621 miles per vehicle. So that's pretty significant there. Now, this company right now is valued at as the 5th most expensive or most valuable automaker in the world right now, the 5th. And it's like a lot of these cars are not even really producing yet. And remember, this is a Chinese company. They were about to go bankrupt a little while back, and they got a special loan from the Chinese government to keep them in business. They also announced that they are doing an offering for $1.3 million in convertible notes. And the planned proceeds from that are going to go towards, corporate purposes and strengthen their balance sheet so they don't have that risk of going bankrupt or having a cash shortage anymore. So speaking about the automakers, we also have Ford, which announced, and this is a lot of information coming out of China here, a 6% increase in car sales in China for 2020. So this is interesting because we are seeing China come back from the pandemic a lot faster than the other economies. And for Ford in particular, this is the first annual increase in China for Ford since 2017. So that is a long time where they weren't having any growth in that area. So it's another car company making good strides in China. Next up, there was a warning sign sent out about stocks being potentially overvalued or getting a little bit too high right now, a little bit of a bubble. So Goldman Sachs chief economist Jan Hatzius warned that high valuations in the stock market might indicate a sell-off is coming. He warned that the Federal Reserve might start tapering the stimulus programs. Tapering the, yeah, right, like that's ever going to happen. You can never stop the stimulus programs and the low interest rates, right? So I don't know if you guys remember, but in January 2020, there were really bad signs in the overnight lending markets. This is before the pandemic started and everything. And all of a sudden, the Fed had to help out by giving these billions of dollars in loans. And the overnight lending rates, they like skyrocketed. And this was before the pandemic. Then the pandemic happened, and that pricked the bubble and then everything crashed and we went into the recession. But if you're looking before that, when they tried to raise interest rates from 1% in 2017 to 2.5% in 2018, going after that, they started having a lot of problems in the economy. It couldn't handle the increased prices there for interest rates. And since we're from the lows, S&P 500 is up 70%, the NASDAQ is about up 80%. So when they started cutting rates again in the past, it wasn't even when we were in a recession, and now we're in a recession. So it's pretty crazy, what's going to happen there. Then you also look at Goldman Sachs raised their growth target to 6.4% for the US economy in 2021. That would be pretty significant if we can make more than 4% growth in a year. Google got sued by a company called Rumble, which is a competitor to YouTube. And in the lawsuit, Rumble is basically claiming that YouTube is using their power on the marketplace to attract viewers and advertising dollars by putting their own search results first. And whenever somebody tries to search for something, it's going to put naturally all of the YouTube items first before Rumble or some other video platform. Then we have Zoom Video, which is going to raise $1.5 billion in a secondary offering. Now, the shares on this company ended up sliding 10% after the news, and everybody knows about Zoom Video because of the pandemic. Then we had a stock called LMND, the online insurance provider, Lemonade. They are offering $3 million in shares. So the stock from them slid $170 it was at, and it slid like 7% or something like that. So there's tons of companies right now issuing new shares and trying to raise capital in this environment. Then you had Signal. There's a great story around this. Elon Musk went out on Twitter and said, hey, everybody should use Signal. So a bunch of these dumb investors, and this shows stupidity in the marketplace, delusions of crowds, madness, popular delusions and the madness of crowds, if you know what that is. So people went and bought this stock called Signal, and it was up 438%. It was like Signal Advance or something like that. The problem is that this is not even the company that Elon Musk was talking about. He was talking about the messenger service Signal, which is an encrypted messenger that you can use instead of WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger, which those two companies take all your information, harvest everything, and sell it to everybody else. That's how they make their profits. So people, and that's also something that Edward Snowden had said that people should use, is this Signal or Telegram as these encrypted messenger services. So I wouldn't call it stock market investors, I would call it stock market gamblers that see these tweets from the world's richest man and then go and make these kind of crazy trades just on the second, and they don't even purchase the right shares of stock. So this is the same thing that happened when people purchased the stock ticker symbol ZOOM, thinking it was Zoom Video Communications, right? But it was actually another company, and they had a halt trading in that other company because people thought it was the wrong one and it was confusing investors. Next up, we have Apple and Hyundai. So there's more Apple car rumors because Hyundai came out and basically said they were in talks with Apple about doing this electronic vehicle. So the car's supposed to come out around 2024, and other analysts are saying it could be as late as 2028. So it's pretty far off, and it's kind of interesting that Hyundai made this announcement. Then you had Apple announcing a plan to spend $100 million towards racial justice goals. So they're going to open an Apple Developer Academy in Detroit. Then they're going to use a academy that has a 30-day course in software development and also a 12-month course on top of that. They're also going to spend $25 million to kind of help out predominantly African-American universities, and then $10 million going to Harlem Capital, which seeks to invest in diverse founders. And it's kind of interesting there, not spending money on the car, they're spending money on whatever program they think is necessary, but the board of directors gets to decide that. Tata Motors said the electronic vehicles accounted for 53% of their Q4 revenues. They're the ones that make the Land Rover and Jaguar brands. The stock was up 14% on the news. And once again, they were doing really well in China. Their sales were up 19.1% in China. And electronic vehicles were 43.3% of sales in 2020. This other amount was just for the last quarter, but it was also significant for all of 2020. So if you look at that stock right now, it was up 62.8% over the last 3 months. A lot of people are just diving into this electronic vehicle market. Speaking of that, remember all the news about Tesla? Well, they just had regulators tell them that they should recall 150,000 vehicles due to safety concerns with the failure of the touch screens in the car. So this is pretty significant because that operates everything in the car through the touch screen. And if you're looking at Tesla now, a market cap of over 800 billion, they're worth more than Facebook, which is worth 708 billion. Actually, they're worth more than Ford, General Motors, Volkswagen, and Fiat Chrysler. All those combined are about worth 246 billion. So you see how high this stock has run. Bitcoin sold off 13% from that 42,000 level. So we're going to see in the battle of Bitcoin here which way it's going to continue in the future. Some updates on video games. So we have Steam, the major PC platform, said that 50.7% more hours were spent on gaming in 2020 compared to 2019. This was a 36% increase also in games grossing over $1 million. So this is helping all the developers that make all these games. And speaking about video games, you also had GameStop. So GameStop had this crazy short squeeze. One of the co-founders, Hyun Cohen of Chewy, he went onto the board of directors for GameStop along with another individual, and there was just a frenzy in the stock price. There was a giant short squeeze. The stock went up 57% to $31.40 recently. The stock was trading at $5 a share just a few weeks ago. Now remember, the new consoles come out, and that's usually a good time for GameStop. They usually make a lot of money on that. So it was supposed to be like this big event, and for the previous quarter, they didn't actually make that much because the consoles had just arrived. Well, now the consoles are starting to show in their earnings. And people were thinking this is going to be the next blockbuster. This company's going to go bankrupt. It was so shorted that the amount of shares outstanding that were short was actually 138% of the shares outstanding sold short. So more shares that average traded were sold short. People were borrowing shares to sell short on top of this. They were being loaned out to multiple people. If I had the shares, I would loan it out to them to sell short, and I'd loan it out to them too. So that's when you know it's crazy. I mean, if you could figure this out ahead of time, you could make some serious cash here, it sounds like. So in the end, investors were like loaning out all this money, and then the short squeeze came in on this good news, and then also with the consoles and everything, and now they're saying they're going to make some more money. And the change in the board of directors, change in strategy, the stock was up 121% in only 1 week. That's an incredible return right there. And you had places like forums online and Reddit and everything blowing up with the information about this one. So that was pretty crazy. They also reported that their sales were up 4.8% and digital sales were up a whopping 309%. So that's another thing that helped drive that stock to skyrocket and have the kind of that short squeeze there. It's pretty crazy. So this is just hitting an all-time high now for, I think, the company. I'm not sure when the last time, at least a 52-week high.